So welcome back. If you were here for the last time, I'm fortunate that you were here if you saw it. This is Elsie Matthews with another episode of the Red, White, and Blue broadcast. And that is Red, R-E-A-D. Just like Indiana Jones, making it up as we go along. Because how else would we do this? Because I'm doing this on the fly. And you got to think fast. And sometimes I think fast, sometimes I don't think fast. I think slow. But today I'm a little on the fast side of getting things set up. I've got everything preset. Was gone for a couple of weeks. Had a nice vacation out in Wyoming and in Montana with family, the wife and her mother. We went to the Grand Tetons and then moved our way north to Yellowstone, and then up north through there we went to Bozeman to fly out. I got plenty of pictures because I do love my photography. I really do. And no, they're not selfies. I despise selfies. I absolutely do. I'd much rather see the scenery that I saw and record it. So that's just my thing because that's how I feel about it. Where did I put my glasses? They're in here somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. So, you know what? Like I said, making it up as we go along. I don't really want to backlight myself too badly. I'm sure that's probably why I'm having trouble with that camera earlier on. See if we can keep this in under 30. Like a lot of people, in the weeks following the death of Charlie Kirk, I tracked what was going on with politics and the response. And the best way to put this is I was absolutely disgusted. I was horrified. The idea that people would be out there celebrating the death of an individual who was wholly unarmed, in public, using only speech as his weapon. The people celebrating that just absolutely left me dumbfounded. I cannot get over that still. It reminds me of some personal memories that I have of an event where I was at a political demonstration in Washington, D.C. about 25 years ago. Actually, 25 years ago this year. And there's nothing like hearing, for a 23-year-old guy, there's nothing like hearing somebody who supposedly wants gun control so it doesn't kill people shout, "I hope you get shot," repeatedly at a crowd of marchers who were heading down Constitution Avenue to the Capitol from a small pro-gun demonstration, pro-Second Amendment demonstration. I won't say pro-gun. Makes you think I'm in for the weaponry. No, I'm in for the right to defend. And they were throwing stuff at us, too. That was amazing. That was 25 years ago. I had no clue that was going to metastasize to this. I mean, I was 23. I was ignorant. I was stupid. I'm still kind of dumb, or still kind of stupid at times. I try not to be ignorant. That is uninformed, as in the Greek word, as the Greeks have it, unknowable, the one who does not know, the one who lives insular. But that is just, now we're in an age, we've crossed into a threshold, we've entered an epoch where political violence is going to be acceptable. Unfortunately, from one side. And I don't think this is an accident. I'm talking on two levels here. From the human level, there is a certain cause and progression of effect that is not a surprise, and it stems from the violence of the late 60s and the 70s, perpetrated by liberal groups, particularly like the Black Panther Party, Weather Underground, socialist Communist Party types who were actively agitating against the United States and various government and its governmental system. Because remember, when you can be mad at the government, you can be mad at the administration, you can be mad at Congress, but the system is important. The system we have is important because it safeguards the rights of every individual. That's for another day. But I don't think it's an accident on a different plane, a spiritual plane. I think, in all honesty, this is part of that warring against principalities, powers that is talked about in Scripture that we're seeing. I mean, I think it was in the book of Daniel, if I remember correctly, that the archangel Michael, a warrior angel, delivers a message to Daniel after Daniel has prayed fervently for an extended period of time. But Michael tells Daniel he got hung up. He couldn't come to him right away to deliver the message because he was in direct conflict with the spiritual ruler of Babylon, if memory serves. I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look at that. I'm playing off memory, and it's been a while since I've read the book of Daniel. Last time I read it, it was mostly in Aramaic. But it's not an accident spiritually. It is a natural cause and effect progression linearly on the base level of time. And I'm going to show you how. Let's take a look over here. Fox News ran an interesting article today. Harvard faculty expressed support for potential left-wing violence during the 2018 panel. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or have seen, but Georgetown University in Georgetown, in the Washington, D.C. area, there was a series of posters that were going up, being placed there by the John Brown Gun Club, which we now know, which has been known really, to be an extremist, leftist, pro-violence, shoot your political opponent type of organization. And the faculty member, well, not the faculty member at that particular one, but one who's associated with a group that is associated with the John Brown Gun Club, is where is it? This guy Dixon, Professor Dwayne Dixon of UNC Chapel Hill. And he is associated with Redneck Revolt, which is birds of a feather with the John Brown Gun Club. I'm sure they're just different names. It's just the same group. Now here you've got this guy. I'm not sure what he teaches. I don't really care. But as a former teacher, I find this absolutely despicable. As a teacher, you're supposed to be modeling what is the best in ideals for your students. Schools, universities especially, should be the grounds upon which people have brought ideas, and thereby, in a search for the truth, go through the process of question and answering. But nowadays we're getting a lot of leftist gobbledygook, and particularly violent leftist rhetoric, out of people who are supposedly teachers and at professors at the university. This guy in particular, i.e., he has been, apparently. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Redneck Revolt. This guy's probably got something going. Probably spewing some kind of anti-American, colonialist, post-colonialistic garbage that you find is typical for a lot of the professors in public universities. I went to some private universities for all of my degrees. Thank God I did. I didn't choose them for that reason. That's just how it fell. But in 2018, they were holding a symposia, I guess you could call it, a panel, and they're talking about, and one, it says 3 faculty members praised the presenter after he made a case for potential armed left-wing political violence. 2018, this is before the George Floyd riots started to take off in the major cities across the U.S. during the COVID era. The era when, churches couldn't meet and people were locked out, from going to their houses of worship. But, people couldn't, and people couldn't hold public vigils in places like that, but, all these protesters were allowed to roam free. I mean, it's just, anyways. But here's the connection I'm going to make to the past with this panel. I would not be surprised if some of the members who were on this panel are children of or were themselves involved in the political hyper-rhetoric of the late 60s and early 70s and are now all but hero worshipping, or practically are hero worshipping, and all but worshipping the ground upon which some of these violent leftists of the 60s and 70s, and particularly like the, like I said, Weather Underground, the Black Panther Party. We just recently, Assata Shakur, who was convicted of murdering police officers in the course of a bank robbery, most likely to provide funds for whatever group she was part of. I think it was the new Black Panther. I think it was the Black Panther Party, but I could be wrong. She died in Cuba because she escaped in 78 or 79 and took off. And she never came back. And Cuba's not going to extradite a fellow traveler. So people on the internet, particularly the leftists, were absolutely mourning the death of this woman and calling her all kinds of glorious and wonderful names. I don't consider a cop killer a glorious and wonderful individual. The reason being, the police are charged with carrying out and executing the frontline aspects of law enforcement in this country, and they get a lot of crap. Pardon my French, but they get a lot of crap. As we see now going on in Portland with Antifa. The thing about Portland that's absolutely fascinating is the police up there just don't want to do anything. The police just don't want to do anything about it, not because I don't think they have a choice in the matter. What's the point of dragging these vile and violent thugs into a jail, putting them before a court that's going to pretty much cut them loose, and then hand the case over to a prosecutor who's pretty much going to slap them on the wrist and send them on their way? You're not going to get anywhere with that. The spirit of good policing has been broken in Portland, and that's the problem up there. But when you attack police, you are attacking the front line of law enforcement in this country, and law enforcement is multi-stage back. We have the police on the front, whose job is to, apprehend the criminals. We have the prosecutors, whose job is to carry the case forward into a court and put it before a panel of people, 12 good people, honest and true, who will evaluate the case according to the law and determine if the law was broken by the accused, and then sometimes, depending on the jurisdiction, hand out the penalty. But in Portland, you can't count on the prosecutors. It's not going to happen. I wouldn't be. I'd have to wonder about the jury pool up there too, but I'm sure people are getting sick of it. But I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating. That's just me speculating at this point. But I can tell you the police up there are probably just sick of seeing all their hard work go to naught. But this stuff is a continual progression. The violence that we're seeing that has been perpetrated since 2020 or earlier, even going back to Mike Brown, 2015, all the hoopla that came out of that, Black Lives Matter. Look, I have no problem saying that all lives matter. Every individual life is the same as another, is the same value morally as another. But BLM was perpetrated on a lie. Let's just leave it at that. But it's been from 2015, possibly 2018, or 2018, possibly 2015. It has been. This is the parent. This is the child outgrowth of the violence of the 60s and the hyper leftist rhetoric. I forget where the study was done, what poll was done recently, but 25% of self-identifying leftists agree that political violence, is acceptable. That's 25% too much. Compared to it was some small single-digit number, I think it was like 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that neighborhood of Republicans, rightists. It's it's just insane. So, I think we're seeing a progression from the natural progression. I see it as a historian. It's just disheartening. And I think we're now we've entered into an epoch from which we cannot return. I'd like to think that we can go back. I'm just not. I'm pessimistic. The progression of empires, nations, and great countries is always downward. I consider it much akin to Newton's third law of thermodynamics. Everything goes from a state of greater order to greater disorder over time. So, moving on to the second and last subject of the day. Oh yeah, Jimmy Kimmel. Did I call that or what? He was just put into timeout. ABC and Disney were trying to basically get him to cool his heels. And Kimmel comes back, and for 2 days, people watch more intently to see if anything happens. And then he loses 64% of his viewer audience. Right back into the cellar. Why? People watched for 2 days to see if he was going to say anything meaningful about his statements regarding Charlie Kirk's death. Now, a lot of people are saying, "Well, it was just a joke. You can't take him too serious for a joke." That's where they're wrong. Absolutely dead wrong. Anybody who's watched late night comedy, and I've watched plenty of it in my time, particularly, I love Jay Leno. I remember a lot. I watched a lot of Jay Leno when I was younger, and up until the time he retired. But anybody who watches late night comedy knows that you use a fact or a real thing to set up, or that the host is using a fact or a real thing to set up the joke. So let us review what Jimmy Kimmel said. Let's take a look at this.
Lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. You can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
Yes.
Okay, so the joke was basically aimed at Trump's appearance to have no feeling for the death of Charlie Kirk. But he prefaces it with, well, we've seen a new lows over this weekends with the MAGA gang, basically pointing fingers at, not at themselves. Basically, the whole idea is that Charlie Kirk was killed. He used as a factual premise that Charlie Kirk was killed by an extreme uber-rightist as a result of infighting on the right wing, rather than what the facts show, which is that the little schmo who killed Charlie Kirk, and I will not use his name, he is a schmuck, and I'm going to leave it there. The little schmuck is an extreme uber leftist, furry loving individual who has a wannabe girl boyfriend that just absolutely is in the tank and believed that Charlie Kirk was spewing hate and needed to die. No, he's not a rightist, he's a leftist. But how can I show you that this is exactly the setup? Well, let's look at the master, Johnny Carson. Love this guy. Love watching his old stuff. Let's take a look at what this Johnny joke.
Most people come out here, they want to see movie stars and celebrities, right? Then people want to know where to go. Hollywood and Vine, you won't see anybody. That's
So the joke is the setup is a lot of people want to go out and see celebrities in Hollywood, and you're not going to find them at Hollywood and Vine. That's his factual setup.
true. Now you can go to Schwab's drugstore on Sunset Boulevard, and you can see Orson Welles eating a case of soup for one. Or you can go to the unemployment office and see baseball players down there. If you really want to see big stars, you want to know what to do? Go to your motel and watch the Savings and Loan TV commercials. All the big stars are there.
So Johnny's setup was people want to go to Hollywood to see celebrities. They want to see the famous. And what he's pointing out is that all of the big names were having trouble getting a job. And he points out the fact that Orson Welles is basically down eating lots of cheap food all at once. That's because Orson Welles got to be a huge guy. He was corpulent as all get out. Or you can go down to the local welfare office and see the baseball players. There's a whole bunch of them, because apparently at that time the Dodgers were probably not the best team. They were probably firing people. But you have this setup. Johnny Carson was good. Johnny Carson didn't go political. He did not get up there and make a stance on things. He poked fun at everybody. He was a kinder version of Don Rickles. And if you've never seen Don Rickles, you need to watch Don Rickles. Don Rickles is great. All right, let's also look at another example. Carson's successor, Jay Leno.
See what's going on? American officials in Iraq are reportedly very frustrated with the Iraqi government because instead of making progress, the Iraqis are fighting about who's going to be in charge and who's going to make the most money. Well, we said we wanted to give them the American-style democracy. Sounds like they got it. Yeah, yeah. Sounds like it's working pretty good. Oh, what else?
So the factual setup. American governmental officials are not happy with what's going on in Iraq. This is in 2003. So we've already booted Saddam. We're trying to set up a whole new government over in Iraq, or at least help them set up one. And instead they're trying to fight over who's going to have the power and the money. Well, that does sound like a lot of American politics. Leno is correct. We did export American governmental systems and styles. But the point of the setup is to lead to the joke. And the joke is to poke fun at the setup. That's not what Kimmel did. Kimmel used an absolute 100% disprovable lie as a factual setup. He was pushing a lie as truth. And you can't be funny if your jokes are predicated on lies. I think it was Ronald Reagan who once said that the only good humor is based in fact and truth. Well, we've watched two legends, and we've watched a hoser, and the legends are funny because they use the truth. Frankly, the whole concept that Trump would not be upset about the death of Charlie Kirk, the question was asked. The video that they used was from a day or two after Kirk's death. And I'm not going to say Trump is heartless, but you have to, in his line of work, you're going to have to move fast. You're going to have to process fast. You grieve your losses where you can, when you can. You're not going to do it in public as much. Who knows how he dealt with it behind the scenes. If I were to lose my wife in some unforeseeable accident, who I've been married to 26 years to this day, today's our anniversary, October 2nd, if I lose her, you will not see me on this screen slobbering about it. But I will work through it behind the scenes. Erica Kirk worked through hers. She forgave the little schmuck. And more than that's a more powerful statement than I could ever have delivered if I'd been in her position. But she is converting her grief into action. She has the right to convert that grief into action. Trump lost one of his major and greatest supporters from 2024 campaign, and someone who he considered a friend. Grief works in its own ways. Grief is a weird thing. Grief is an extremely weird process. You never go through the steps of grief the same way twice. At nearly 50 years old, I've lost all my grandparents. I've lost my father-in-law. And oddly enough, I've lost the first homestead home, solid concrete home I ever lived in. And I've grieved differently every time. Grief is just different. So anybody who says that Trump doesn't grieve about this, nonsensical morons. But Kimmel lied. That's the key. Kimmel lied. He used a lie as the preface, the factual point on which to begin his joke, which wasn't even funny. It belly flopped harder than a 500-pound fat man in a kiddie pool. It's just, Kimmel needs to retire, take whatever money he's got, invest it in gold, and get out of the business. He's not funny. So that's all now for today, October the 2nd, 2025. I hope you are well, and remember, this is L.C. Matthews, signing off, and have a good day.